The morning Caleb Warren hired her, his hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the contract into the dust. It wasn't fear of her height, though she stood a full head taller than him, or the quiet strength in the way she carried herself. It was fear of people, of words, of being seen. Caleb had spent most of his life hiding behind fences, cattle, and long days of silence on his remote Arizona ranch. And now, standing in front of him, was a Navajo woman named Atza, with calm, dark eyes that seemed to notice everything, yet judged nothing. Caleb cleared his throat. I need a cook," he said, staring at the ground. "Just simple meals. You can stay in the small house by the creek." Atza nodded once. "I understand," she said softly. Her voice carried the steadiness of desert wind. "I'll start today." And with that, something quietly shifted on the ranch, though Caleb wouldn't realize it for another week. Before we continue this powerful story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Frontier Stories, where every story reminds us that kindness still matters. Caleb Warren had always been known as the quiet one. After his parents died when he was young, words slowly abandoned him. Running the ranch became his entire world, long rides, open skies, and nights where silence pressed heavier than loneliness. Hiring a cook wasn't something he wanted. It was something he needed. A recent injury to his shoulder made daily chores painful, and most nights he survived on beans straight from the can. Atza changed that on the very first evening. She didn't ask many questions. She simply cooked. The smell of fresh cornbread and slow-simmered stew drifted across the ranch like a memory Caleb didn't know he still had. When she set the plate in front of him, she didn't hover or talk. She just said, "Eat while it's warm," and stepped back. Caleb took a bite and froze. It tasted like home. Like the meals his mother once made when laughter still lived in the house. Something tightened in his chest. Over the next few days, a quiet rhythm formed. Atza woke before sunrise, cooked, cleaned, and sometimes hummed low, wordless songs as she worked. Caleb noticed how she fed the ranch dogs first, always with a gentle touch. How she left a cup of coffee by the barn without saying a word, knowing he'd forget otherwise. She never pushed conversation, never filled the silence, and somehow that made the silence feel lighter. On the fifth day, Caleb found her sitting by the creek during her break, weaving something from leather strips and beads. He meant to keep walking, but she looked up and smiled. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. They sat across from each other, steam rising between them. Minutes passed. No words. Finally, Atza spoke. "You don't talk much," she said, not accusingly, just noticing. Caleb swallowed. "People usually leave when I try." Atza considered that. "Sometimes silence is its own language," she replied. "You speak it well." That night, Caleb slept better than he had in years. On the seventh day, everything changed. Caleb woke before dawn with a sharp pain in his chest. His breath came shallow. His hands trembled, not from shyness this time, but fear. He collapsed near the barn. When he opened his eyes again, the sun was higher, and Atza was kneeling beside him, her strong hands steady against his shoulders. "Caleb," she said firmly, "stay with me, breathe." She had found him while bringing his coffee. She didn't panic. She didn't waste time. She used her phone to call emergency services, then did something Caleb never expected. She placed his hand against her chest. "Feel that," she said. "Breathe with me." Slow, in, out, her heartbeat was calm, grounded, unshakable. Caleb matched it. By the time help arrived, the worst had passed. The doctor later said it was severe exhaustion mixed with stress, years of carrying everything alone. As they drove him to the clinic, Caleb realized something that shook him more than the pain ever could. No one had ever noticed him enough to save him before. When Caleb returned to the ranch days later, weaker but alive, he found something waiting for him. On the kitchen table sat the leather piece Atza had been weaving, a simple bracelet etched with symbols. "It means balance," she explained when he asked, "and shared strength." Caleb's voice cracked. "You didn't have to do all that for me." Atza met his eyes. "Kindness isn't a favor," she said. "It's a responsibility," he nodded slowly. "I've spent my whole life thinking I was better alone." She smiled gently. "And now?" Caleb looked around the ranch, the warm kitchen, the fed animals, the quiet presence that no longer felt empty. "Now I think I just didn't know how to let anyone stay." Atza didn't leave after that week, and Caleb didn't become talkative overnight. But every morning, 2 cups of coffee sat on the porch. 2 people shared the silence. And for the first time in a long time, that silence was full of understanding. Because sometimes the greatest acts of kindness don't come wrapped in loud words or grand gestures, but in steady hands, quiet presence, and the courage to care when it would be easier to walk away. And when we allow kindness in, it doesn't just save us, it teaches us how to live again.